know what I realized? I have never done a video on seasonal patterns. Seasonal patterns. These are the patterns where the fish, the bass in your lake, move from spot to spot depending on the season and the water temp. The water temp is the most important part to take out of that. So with that being said, we'll get into each one of them as we go. But there are key factors with each one of them that you need to understand that I'm going to try to go through in this video. Now, with that being said, these are all videos that I shot on the fly. Much like all of my other videos, I try not to do a lot of script writing and everything else, so I'm just going to give you the knowledge off the top of my head while giving you some screen recordings that I shot between jobs while at work. So if you have any questions at the end of it, feel free to ask them down in the comments or just make some recommendations for later on and we'll see about improving them. However, with that being said, here are the lists of the water temps in which each of the patterns begin to start. Now, disclaimer, this is very simplified. There are a lot of other things that we could go into on how these things are affected. However, I'm not going to do that for this video because this is a mile long rabbit hole that you can go a mile down just trying to figure out a few patterns. This is the basic stuff. Now there are outliers to all of these. This is just to give you, if you're starting to do tournament fishing or anything like that, and you're curious about patterns, this is to give you a basic, bare bones lowdown of each of the patterns. So with that being said, let's start off the first one with fall. Now, for fall fishing, where I'm gonna start is I am going to start up here. Shallow water fishing. So I'm going to be looking for these points here. Shallow flats and everything else, because this area has plenty of them. Because the fish at this point are going to be moving up, trying to feed up for the winter transition. So you really want to focus on these shallow areas and see if you can locate bait fish while you're doing so. So a point like the backs of these creek arms would be great. These large flats are awesome spots. Secondary points or main lake points if you can really get them to that close to shore. Secondary points. All of those are good, viable locations to locate bass in this time of year. Now let's open up my marker here so I can give you a better visualization. So as we talked about prior, all of these points are areas that I would definitely scan to look for bass. The biggest thing here is making sure that you locate bait fish. If you will go over and scan it and don't locate any bait fish, then it's probably best for you to move on. With that being said, making sure that you have the right baits is an important aspect too, as you want bait imitating lures. So for this time of year, a spinner bait is a very valuable piece of equipment in your tackle box. Also, depending on the terrain, jerk baits are really awesome as well. Square bills are good. You can, in some situations, you could use soft plastic flukes and stuff like that. All of those are valuable pieces that you could use. I definitely lean towards them more depending on the terrain I'm in. And I'll go into a video on how I select which bait in a little bit later video. However, for now, let's just go over seasonal patterns. All of these red areas are definitely areas that I'm going to mark and try to locate bass. Now the reason this area is so good is because of the deep water main river channel right here. This gives them access to deep water in the winter. and it's close by so they can move back out to the deep water in the colder winter months. A few other keynotes with fall is you're going to really like the weather outside, looking for grass beds that are green. Now, if you're looking and fishing in grassy areas, which was not on the map, the moment that grass starts to brown or die out, those bass are gone. So if you found a grass flat, that structure right there, where you caught bass the day before, and you try it again, they're probably not going to be there anymore. The moment it starts to shift color, they're gone. So keep that in mind. And we'll go ahead and we'll move into winter. Winter fishing can be a discouraging time to go fishing, as it's cold, and if it's rainy at all, it's really miserable. However, the fishing seems to get a little bit simpler during this time of the year, as mainly you're looking for deep water located near to structural areas where they would be for the spawn and fall transitions. This is also the same space you'll want to keep an eye on for the summer months. As for the winter months, you definitely want to focus on deep water close to shore. So in this aspect on this map here at Henry S. Truman Lake, you really want to focus on this bank right here. This has plenty of deep water access where the bass can cover multiple levels of water in the water column while exerting little amounts of energy, but still feeding, because contrary to popular belief, the bass do not stop eating in the winter. They do not hibernate. They continue to feed throughout the year, just much less in the winter. Now imagine yourself taking a cold plunge. You're not exactly hungry when it's freezing outside, but eventually you will get hungry and you will want to eat. That's the same thing for the bass, because their bodies take up and consist of being surrounded by this cold water year round. So you definitely want to make sure that you're still using baits that slow it down a bit but still mimic bigger fish. Now you can also switch yourself around on the opposite end of that spectrum and fish for a reaction bite. That's why jerk baits are such a good bait this time of the year. Now we'll go into bait selection for winter later. However, right now, just go with the deeper diving baits that can be moved and controlled in the water column a bit more. Those will get most of your bites throughout the winter. So don't hold tight to one style of fishing during this time of the year, because it's really not going to benefit you too much. Be open, try different baits in the area, like a lipless. You can try a jerk bait. Those are one of the phenomenal baits for the winter months. Give them a shot. But remember these patterns as they move. Now, moving on to the next one, pre-spawn. Now for pre-spawn, we're going to move up to where they're going to go when they start to do the pre-spawn. So this is, like I said, spring is the most complicated part of any bass fishing, as they practically can be in a lot of different locations, and is broken up and is confusing to a lot of people if you're not following the bass every day. So with this, what they're going to do is they're going to move from their winter havens out here, and they're going to slowly bounce off a cover and work their way up to a possible spawning location that's wind protected and it has hard bottom. That's where they're going to make their way. So for example, if there's a dock along this route here, there's a dock, say right here, that would be an excellent spot to hit. If there is this secondary point is a good spot to hit. And that doesn't go for just one side of it. Hit on every side. if you have a dock that has access to deeper water, that's probably going to be a good spot for you to hit. Like here, you can't quite see it on this one, but there is a dock right there on the corner of that one. That is an excellent spot to try to start your journey when the water starts to warm up, anywhere between 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit. You really want to try to hit those spots all the way back to the spawning areas, and that'll tell you right off the bat where they are in that point of the transition from post-spawn to spawn to pre-spawn. Now, if you're guaranteed and you know this lake, you've been on it a lot, you know that the water's nowhere near warm enough for that. You can try to hit these guys back out here in their winter spots to see if there's still a majority of them there, and then work your way up. Pre-spawn can be a fun time of the year to fish because the water's starting to really warm up and the bite's starting to get good, and it's getting easier to kind of follow the bass, like I said in the other video. But make sure you focus on that structure between them and don't get discouraged traveling up and down the bank and not finding anything. Just stay diligent. Once you find them, you found them. So keep that in mind, right? And once they get to their spawning areas, you'll be good to go, which, let's go into spawn. Now spawn. In the spawn, they're going to be in the spawning areas like we talked about. Hard areas with plenty of cover. From wind, with hard areas, preferably 10 feet or less of water. So they could be really in any of these areas where there's less than 10 foot of water. As long as it is wind protected, like docks and other things, they're probably going to be in those locations. Now, you can go from bank to bank or channel arm to channel arm, really checking to see if there's any structure where there might be. You're going to want to use realistic natural baits because this time of the year when they're in the middle of their spawn, they are not going to eat out of hunger. There's lots of controversy on fishing for spawning fish. However, if you're in a tournament situation and it's legal, I say go for it. As long as you're not out there trying to purposely blow up beds on fish that you can't catch, I think you're doing fine. And I think you're okay. So remember, try to go natural on these baits, as natural as possible, slow down and try to force a bite out of a protective instinct. Don't try to focus on the feed response because you're probably not going to get it. Let's move into post-spawn. Post-spawn. Now prior to the spawn, the males are going to stay back in the spawning bays to protect the eggs and protect the fry. With that being said, at this point, the females are going to be very lethargic and in a funk, so to speak. They're not going to want to feed very much, but they will be close by. So for example, if their location to spawn was right back here, then the female is probably going to be somewhere in this area nearby, while the male is going to stick around this area to protect the fry and keep them safe. You're focusing on reaction bites for the females, so you want to go with reaction there. On the males, you want to go with something to get him to where he's going to eat, because he's going to be hungry. Because if he gets too hungry, he'll start eating his own fry. But he's more focusing on protecting the fry than he is feeding himself. So keep that in mind when fishing around the areas. And if you catch a male, that probably means there's a female nearby, and you should probably keep searching the area until you find a good sized female. Like I said, the females are going to be in a funk. They're going to be the ones you want to get, but they're not going to want to really eat right now. And the males are too busy protecting the fry, but they are going to be hungry. So definitely focus on the areas around it. If you get one bite, you're probably going to get another one nearby. So stay in that area and work it a little bit on those practice days. And then if you're not getting anything, maybe switch up baits or try a different location, and definitely mark that spot on your map for later use. But now moving into the best time of the year, in my opinion, summer. Now, summer. Again, let me reiterate that this is all oversimplified. In the hot summer months, the oxygen levels in the water are going to start to deplete, especially in shallower water. You might still find plenty of big bass in shallow water. However, a majority of them, and by majority I could mean half or 40% of the total bass population, is probably going to move back out to their deep water sanctuary where the water is colder with the thermocline and the oxygen levels are still higher. Now you can still find plenty of bass up here on shallow water cover throughout the years as long as it's heavily shaded. The bass are going to seek shaded shelter during this whole time as it keeps them out of the sun, makes it where they can see, and they still get a decent meal in. They're also going to be particularly active during this time of the year when out here. So when fishing out here, make sure you keep an eye on plenty of bait fish, bait balls, and try to fish those heavy steep banks. And if you're not having any luck off of that, then try beating the bank on each of these creek arms and then the secondary and main lake points. Summer, the flipping and pitching season. This is where lay down trees become my best friend, or docks become my best friend. I love fishing in the summer, especially with a wacky rig on clear water. Absolutely my favorite. That's where I want to be. But with that being said, that kind of wraps up everything for summer. I would recommend during summer to make sure that you try to, if you don't have forward-facing sonar or something like that, which I don't, try to use the old style method of flipping and pitching and following your sonar. Follow humps, lay down trees, grass lines. That's when all of these baits become pretty viable because the bass can be really anywhere. Right? They move around searching for spots to hide in shade, keep themselves covered, cooler water. This is a really good time of the year to really go out and fish. Plus it's hot. It might be miserable for some, but me, I would rather be hot than cold. But that's just me. But with that being said, if you have any other questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments. I'll talk to you guys later, and my next video is going to be on bait selection. So thank you for watching. Talk to you guys soon.